Just do some touch and goes with the Viper. Okay, here we go. Caucasus landing. Trying to show the landing gear behavior upon touchdown. It seems like a little bone jarring, especially when you try to land smooth and kiss the ground with the plane. So for story business, let's see what stores we have. Oh, it's our fuel quantity. It doesn't tell us yet. It's the F2 view. No external tanks. Yeah, Cat 1. Cat 1 on the store switch, so should probably be fairly light too. Yeah, fairly light. Okay. Store switch Cat 1. Alright, I'm too high. I'm dropping down. That's good right there. Okay, so the dash line of the threshold runway. Flight path marker at that same location along with the top of the stable. And coming in, holding her right here until the flare. A little bit below where the threshold is. That's good right there. And flare. And you get that jolt of the main gear touching the runway. Come around again for another pass until I'm bingo, and then I'll do a full stop then. I think bingo's about 700 pounds of fuel, so maybe one more pass. I just leave the gear extended. Let's climb up to 2,000 feet. I think gear speed in the Viper, if memory serves correct, is 300 knots. We'll do a right-hand pattern because of Tbilisi runway being right there. Alright, turning right. Slowing on speed AOA. And dropping my altitude to 1,500 feet. I'm also using trim. the nose up a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 clicks of trim, not more than that. Just enough trim to get to on speed. And hold her there. I think I gave about 3 clicks of trim. I've also got the speed brakes out. That helps you hold onto on speed. 1,400 feet. I want to gain about 100 feet of altitude right now. I'm looking for my sight picture. For my perch turn. Just changes to fuel. We got enough fuel for another pass. We'll do another touch and go. Alright, turning in. 30 degrees. Holding her right there. Right about there is good. Might have to make it a little more steeper of a turn. I overshot a little bit, but that's okay, I can correct. Overshot the turn, but I'm on the glide slope. Alright, just hold the glide slope, correct my lineup. And hold her about here. And flare. And back up into the air. And this is my last pass. This one will be a full stop landing. So, I don't know, to me this effect of when you touch down with the wheels onto the ground, it doesn't seem very smooth. I'm not pulling up so hard in my flare that I'm slowing the aircraft down from on-speed AOA. Up too high, turning right. 45-degree turn to the right. I'll do 45-degree turn this time instead of 30 degrees on the perch turn. Also, it seems like after touching down, the trim needs to be reset for on-speed AOA, like in a touch and go. I notice I have to retrim the airplane nose up 2 or 3 more clicks. So I don't know if that's like on weight on wheels. The plane needs to be retrimmed after getting back up in the air. But you'll see when I slow down here. I let go of the stick. Well, I might be wrong. It might just be a little bit of placebo effect going on there. I don't have the boards out yet either, so boards coming out. There we go. There's a plane coming into Tbilisi. That's why I wanted to do a right pattern instead of a left, so I'm not in his way. Big sucker too. Probably a C-17. Yeah. C-17 coming into Tbilisi. Yeah, see, I have to retrim because I haven't touched the trim yet. I've increased my speed as well, so I did want to gain some altitude and slow down here. I'll be at 1,500 feet. I'm at 1,300, 1,400 right now, so let me get to 1,500, and I don't have very long to do it. That's 1,500 coming up. 1,450. All right, let's give it one click of trim. Nose up. All right, I gotta take this turn here. Another click of trim, nose up, and turning. 45 degrees this time in the turn. A bit fast, slow down. Hold on speed, just the top of that staple. This time when I roll out, yeah, I overshot again. Rats. And I'm a little bit high on the glide slope. Let's fix that. Come down. Okay. This one's going to be a bit of a nastier landing. I'll do one more pass after this. Still haven't reached the bingo fuel limit. Alright, there we go. On speed and flare. See, that one seems smoother, but I'm also a lot less fuel. I don't know, maybe it's just my eyes. The problem is when you're not at 2,100 pounds of fuel and you're coming in with ordnance on your wings, it really feels heavy coming in and landing. The effect of the main gear touching the ground seems a little exaggerated. Because if you're at on speed AOA, if you're at the green circle here on the indexer, your AOA is at the green line here. That's where your wings are producing the most lift. So aerodynamically, as you come in for landing, you also have ground effect to deal with that is cushioning your landing. Whereas it kind of seems like my landing's not very cushioned. Oh, just hit bingo fuel limit. So this one will be a full stop landing. And come in for a full stop this time. Now what I do for a full stop is when I aero brake, I leave the nose up and leave it at on-speed AOA with the green circle until the nose wants to just naturally come down. But I kind of hike it up as long as I can because the brakes on this airplane are not the best, and I don't know. I mean, I've not flown a real F-16, so I don't know if that's accurately depicted or not. I assume it is. But it takes forever to brake even with a light airplane like this. The brakes are just not that powerful. Okay, so I don't really have to trim, it seems like, for on speed. So maybe I was just too fast. I didn't reach the speed for the trim, the headset, before when I was in the pattern. Alright, bring the nose up so we don't get past our altitude. 1,500 feet HEL. It's about 3,000 feet MSL at Vaziani. And get to on speed, which would be the flight path marker to the top of the AOA staple. Right there. That's on speed AOA for the approach. When you flare, you're bringing that flight path marker down to the middle of the staple. If you're looking at the staple, I think I'm gonna give it one click of trim nose up. Alright. And let's go ahead and begin our turn. Right turn, 45 degrees, holding on speed AOA. Give it a little power. Ease up on the pull. That's good there. I have a good feeling about this lineup. This is going to be right on center line this time, which is going to be good. Yep. And a little bit high on the glide slope, but I can adjust. Yeah, boy. Best landing for last. Alright. Slowing down, slowing down, slowing down. There's on speed, holding that. She's very light right now with the fuel tanks at 1800, so. And flare. Oh. Landed short that time. Hold the nose up. Hold that green circle there. Don't pull any more than the green circle, you risk scraping the brakes. Okay, hold her up, hold her up. I'll let her just roll down the runway. That is Charlie. We should have Delta coming up, I think, or Bravo, one or the other. I think Delta. There's Delta. Go ahead, hit the brakes. Nose wheel steering on. Go ahead and take Delta out of here. So here's parking next to these Blackhawks. Okay. So obviously with an airplane with only 1,800 pounds of gas and hardly any ordnance loaded on the outside, because I don't have any. Just captive A9s. So with an airplane with 1,800 pounds of gas and captive A9s, yes, the landing feels smoother because the plane weighs less. However, the weight of the plane in relation to the aerodynamics involved really shouldn't matter on the landing as much, except for the landing rollout, because you're still holding the same angle of attack on your approach coming in. It's just that your approach speed is different depending on your weight. Your indicated airspeed, like I think on our approaches here, I was coming in at like 140, 150 knots. Obviously, I weighed way more with fuel load on the plane and possibly ordnance on the wings. I wouldn't be coming at 140, 150 knots. I'd be coming in at like maybe 160 or 170. I would have a higher approach speed. However, the angle of attack indexer and the symbology is still going to remain the same. And aerodynamically, I'm still going to be producing the most amount of lift to these wings because I'm holding that angle of attack. Also, the other thing is, aerodynamically speaking, once you get closer to the ground has this lifting effect. When your wing gets closer to the ground, you have this lifting effect from ground effect, cushioning your landing instead of just coming and plopping the airplane down on the ground. So there needs to be a cushioning of the landing as well. So just for grins, I have a mission that I did in Syria with an F-16 already, a hot start. We can go ahead and take off with that. And that airplane is fully fueled with no stores. So you can see the difference that the fuel makes as well on the airplane. Where did I put it? S. There it is. So with a fully fueled airplane, I think I have like about 9,000 pounds of fuel on the plane when I start in this mission, and I have no stores, no pylons. It's a clean F-16. I just get in there pretty quick and do a pattern around Incirlik. I'll do one touch and go, and then I'll do a full stop landing. And I have no wind in this mission. This mission starts with everything default in the editor because I was using this mission as a template, basically, for static placement of objects on Incirlik. Okay, so I'm here. Let's go to the fuel page. Got 7,000 pounds of fuel, so a lot more fuel than where we started off at 2,500 pounds, I think, before. Clean airplane. We go ahead and taxi to the runway. Shouldn't take long. The runway's right here to my left. That's interesting there that the taxi line doesn't have the curvature showing you the turn. Some of the taxiway lines are like that. Probably just require a little editing. Like these here, they show you the turn, but this is a main taxiway, of course. Or you were coming from a parking area onto a main taxiway. Also, that area there continues to take you to where the additional shelters are. So, right on takeoff, okay, Cat 1. Make sure I'm in Cat 1. On takeoff, I'll do a military power takeoff. That way, I don't burn too much fuel. And go ahead and take runway 05. And away we go. I'll leave the gear down. We'll just do pattern work. Airspeed alive, nose wheel steering off. 130 knots, pull back on the stick. Not too much. Alright. You can see some of the statics I placed. I got some tankers. Cargo plane down there, the C-17. Some more tankers and stuff back there. Climb to 2,000 feet and make a left-hand turn. I'm looking at the radar altitude. Okay, left-hand turn. Let the nose come down by itself. Pull. And hold the pull. A pretty good visual reference I use for this pattern work is the, in the distance, the Adana Hilton Hotel is actually a pretty good visual landmark to use. So coming out to heading of 230, I'm coming down to 1500 feet, bringing the air brakes out. So right about there is where the hotel is. You can see it off in the distance, and as you get closer, you can see it better as the LODs load in. Start giving a nose some trim a little bit. Slowing to on-speed AOA. There's about 1500. We'll go ahead and hold that. Get on to on-speed AOA. And Adana Hilton in front of us. And there's Interlake. That's good right there. And you can see the little Patriot systems I put down there. They're actually static right now so that they don't operate. They just stare as eye candy. But I do like that Patriot layout down there. Holding about 1500. What I use as the indicator as to when to begin my turn is that body of water down there, that small lake. When that gets like the FAC button, I turn. So that's right now, and you can see that's my sight picture looks like. So we'll go ahead and begin our turn. Bit heavier, so obviously approach speed is higher. I'm at 180 knots right now. So the approach speed being higher shouldn't affect the aerodynamics of the landing. What it does affect is the rollout for stopping the airplane. Because I'm still using the same aerodynamic cues of the angle of attack indexer, staple, etc. So she's heavier, so she wants more power to hold on speed AOA. 168 knots. Bit low. Fix my glide slope, fix my lineup. Maybe one or two touch and goes and a full stop landing. Gotta catch that sink right there. I'm just not at the correct glide slope, I can see that, but alright. Flare. I definitely didn't want to hit the rabbit lights, so alright. Power. That wasn't the best landing. I'll do another touch and go, and then I'll do a full stop. So we get three attempts in. That way it's not like, okay, on this one landing it looks smooth, on this one it didn't, on this one, you know, it's... And then also the pilot technique doesn't come into play a little bit. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. If I'm consistent with my technique, then it shouldn't. And I'll be honest with you, that pass I did right there wasn't the best pass I've had. But I had to get used to the airplane being heavier a little bit from the last passes I did from the other mission. Okay, left turn. 45 degrees. Let the nose come down. Hold the nose around where the horizon is by increasing the pull on the stick. They did a very nice job with this map. The little details that they, I mean, overall, you have to think about it, and it looks beautiful. And bring the boards out. Slow to on-speed AOA and the altitude I want to hold at. Using the concept of pitch for speed and throttle for altitude. I'll go ahead and give it one click of trim. Bring the nose up a little bit. So basically at the start of this mission I started with a Viper, empty of any ordnance on the wings, empty of any pylons, and only with full internal fuel. I think I have cannon ammo, but I'm not sure about that. I think I do. I think I left cannon ammo in, fully loaded. But pretty much whatever the plane starts with, I just took the pylons off of it, made sure it had full fuel. Alright, there's the turning point right there, turning in. I'll make it 30-degree turn because I'm heavier. And goal is to hold on speed nice and smooth. I have a good feeling about this approach this time. I know the goal is when you come out of the turn you want to be at 300 feet, but with all these obstacles in front of the runway here, maybe about 400 feet is good, which is where I'm at. But also there's 300 feet, so come here, go ahead and correct my lineup. I'm below glide slope, so we'll fix that too. Giving quite a bit of trim right now. Make sure I'm at on speed. Okay, let the nose settle right about there. And flare. And up we go. Next landing is a full stop. That passes better, but still you can see the gear touching the ground, gives you this jolting effect. Which I'm not saying is not realistic. I mean, I'm not a Viper pilot, so I can't speak to that, but so I don't know how smooth it is landing in a F-16 in reality. But I do know as an end user, it's disconcerting when you're using the correct technique coming in and the plane is jolting around like that. It's kind of like, oh crap, did I land wrong? What did I break this time? Compared to other airplanes in DCS as well, that's the other thing. In fact, with that in mind, and granted I don't have the control set up, I think. I was gonna say let me try with the F15, but I don't have my stick set up for that right now. But maybe later on I can try with the F-15. Hey, granted, it's a Flaming Cliffs 3 plane, but it's the same type of landing technique. Basically, you're holding on speed AOA. You hold it, hold it, hold it. You come in for the flare and you touch down. It's a different experience landing the F-15 a little bit. I'm trying to think if there's any other airplane I might be able to try while I have the control set up, but I don't really have the control set up for anything right now. I only have the control set up for my F-14, and that has a whole different technique to it. Let's go ahead and put the boards out and slow down speed AOA. We'll do a full stop landing this time. Really wish the HAZ shelters would open and close the doors like they do on the Caucasus, because part of having a HAZ is the enemy not knowing what you have stationed at the airbase, because either the HAZ is empty or it's not. What I mean by that is you don't know what kind of airplane is in what HAZ, or if there even is an airplane inside, and that's part of a strategy in deploying HAZ hardened aircraft shelters. Alright, beginning my turn, 30 degree left hand turn, holding on speed AOA with the back stick pressure on the stick, and adjusting throttle as necessary. And holding the flight path marker basically right about where the wing on the right side touches the -5 degree on the horizon line on the pitch ladder. Slowing, make sure you got on speed, because that's going to affect our descent rate and our altitude and everything. Alright. Probably level off right about here because I'm getting too low. So we'll hold level here. Coming off to the left, correcting my lineup and correcting my glide slope. Okay, lineup's getting corrected, glide slope's getting corrected. Lineup is good. Glide slope, still not the perfect glide slope. Fixing that. Alright, that's as good as it's gonna get. And flare. A little late in the flare. But see, that wasn't on speed AOA. Let's go around real quick. That was shorter on speed, or that was on speed AOA, but it wasn't the landing AOA with the green circle in the middle of the AOA indexer. The green circle in the middle of the AOA indexer is your landing angle of attack when you flare. So let's get up to altitude quickly. I'll make like a short pattern here. Went on a go around. And slow to on speed AOA. Which one's the Hilton? That one in front of me. Alright. That's too low, that pass. It seems like the trim doesn't want to respond when you're trying to set the plane up for on-speed AOA. Sometimes I have to give it multiple turns of the trim, clicks of the trim. It's good. So I'm managing on speed by backstick pressure on the stick as well as throttle movement. I remember I didn't manage it at the last second because I lost focus for a minute while I was talking probably. And I went faster than on speed AOA, which definitely made me decrease altitude. My descent rate was way too high, which is why when I rolled out I was at 200 feet AGL instead of 400 feet, which makes quite the difference. Now coming up to a perfect lineup, roughly. Glide slope is still off. I'll just hold the airplane at the horizon line at on speed AOA. We'll go ahead and bring the horizon, or the dash line up to the threshold marking. There's a click of trim right there. There's another click of trim right there. We'll hold that. Alright, let the nose drop. Click forward on trim. Click forward on trim. Click, 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 click forward on trim. Click, click. There we go. Flare. I didn't want to hit the rabbit lights. See? It's like when you have that yellow, green circle. This is a full stop this time. Let's go ahead and hold the green circle. Green circle, hold it right there. Not any more than that. We want to make sure. Want to make sure she doesn't scrape the boards, which I do have out. Okay, board's fully out now. And let her roll. And let's go ahead and hit the brakes. I'm literally slamming on the brakes right now in order to stop her. She always wants to pull to the right for some reason too. Alright, let's turn left. Ooh, big dip there. Wasn't expecting that. That's a nice touch. That could definitely probably flip my airplane over if I took that too fast. And here we go, full brakes, and she hardly wants to stop. Okay. Alright, so in closing, based on this little touch and go testing, let's call it, what I think is going on is if you hold the flight path marker up here at the top of the staple, so when you're at the top of the staple, this light up here is illuminating. I think it's this light up here. Honestly, I'm not looking at the AOA index or too much. I'm looking at the staple. But when the flight path marker is up here on the top of the staple and your wheels touch down on the ground with the flight path marker here, yeah, it's smooth and you don't even notice that the airplane has really touched onto the ground. It's not as noticeable. But when the flight path marker is here around the center position of the staple, which is where, as far as I'm aware, unless I'm mistaken, it's where that should be upon touching down in the middle of the flare for the landing. The behavior of the plane seems as though the plane is losing lift and crashing down to the ground, which is why you're getting that kind of jolting effect when you're landing. And when I say crashing down on the ground, I don't mean like a F-14 or Hornet, when it lands. I'm just saying that I can notice the difference between the flight path marker being here at the top of the staple versus here in the center of the staple. Now, the technique I'm aware of that I've read about is the guideline is to fly at 2,000 feet AGL, roughly about 10 miles or so away from the runway threshold. If you're just doing, we're just talking about straight in now. I'm not even talking about turn for perch and all that. Although that's what I was doing in the pattern just to get a couple of touch and goes in. If I did straight in, this video would be much longer. But the technique I'm aware of is to fly straight and level at 2,000 feet AGL. When you get to the point where the runway threshold meets this dashed line here. Oh, and also to fly straight and level in landing configuration. So what I mean by landing configuration is landing gear down, but the board's not out yet. And your speed is, I think, 300 knots. So basically at 300 knots is right at I think the landing gear is rated for 300 knots. So you get slower than 300 knots, you can bring the landing gear down. But when you bring the landing gear down, you'll slow down. Anyways, fly straight and level, 2,000 feet AGL. Once the threshold of the runway meets halfway down here, because you're not going to have these dash lines until the runway, or until your landing gear is down, extended. Once the runway is between the horizon line, the runway threshold is between the horizon line and the -5 degree pitch line on the pitch ladder, then you extend your air brake and you slow to on-speed AOA while moving your flight path marker down to where the runway threshold will be. That will put you immediately on a 3-degree glide slope, using that as a reference. Then what you do is you hold these three things together. So you hold the flight path marker, these dashed lines, and the top of the staple on the end of the runway threshold. You hold that throughout the entire approach. Once you reach the runway overrun, then what you do is you pull back on power to idle. And you bring the flight path marker by use of backstick pressure to the center of the AOA staple, keeping in mind that you're also moving the flight path marker down the runway. As you move the flight path marker down the runway in your flare, you also want it to not get too close to the horizon line so that when you're in the middle of the flare, you float the airplane. You don't want the airplane to float, you just want to reduce the descent rate and have it glide down to a gentle landing. So you don't want the flight path marker up here at the horizon line, you want it slightly below the horizon line. The text that I read says to move the flight path marker approximately 500 feet down the runway from the point of the threshold, so that's the reference it gives you. Once you do that, you basically hold that attitude of the flight path marker being moved up in the middle of the flare, but when you move the flight path marker up, you're also having it holding here at the center of the AOA bracket. You don't want it encroaching down lower in the AOA bracket than the center. So basically hold it at the center or slightly above, but you don't want it anywhere lower than that, because then you risk having such a high angle of attack that you might scrape the air brakes because they're extended during the landing. And you hold that until touchdown. Once the airplane touches down on the ground, now you work on aero braking, which is basically holding that same sight picture of the AOA bracket. Now at this point, I'm not even looking at the AOA bracket, flight path marker, or anything like that. I just make sure I'm lined up on the runway center line and maintain that track down the runway during the rollout with the rudder pedals. But on the aero braking, I just look here and just get it to where the center green circle illuminates, and I hold that nose attitude, and I keep adding more and more and more backstick pressure to hold that as the airplane's speed bleeds down. As I just set it to where it's that green circle and don't move it from there as the airplane slows down, that's not going to be the AOA anymore. So you need to pull back on stick more and more and more. Eventually, as you do the rollout for the landing, you pull the stick all the way back to where you can't pull it back anymore. The airplane's nose stays up, and then it will come down naturally by itself, because there's just no more lift underneath of the wings to keep the nose up. So the airplane will just bring its nose down by itself gradually as you're holding the stick all the way back. But you can't hold the stick all the way back at the very beginning. You have to work moving the stick back. Once you do that and the nose comes down, you're roughly around 80 knots or so. I usually let the airplane roll for a little bit before I start using the wheel brakes. The wheel brakes on this airplane are really not the best, even with the anti-skid and everything. To me, it seems like it's drifting to the right every time I slam on the brakes, and I'm giving it equal rudder pedal pressure on the wheel brakes, so at the same time in unison. So for some reason, it wants to always slide over to the right when using the wheel brakes. I don't know if it's some fluke with the wheel brake coating that one wheel brake is stronger than the other, and so the plane wants to veer to the right more, but instead of the plane keeping a straight track or roughly a straight track, it's like I have to give it full left rudder and wheel brakes at the same time, which is not easy to do with these pedals I've got. I've got the Thrustmaster pedals, but even with them, it's still not easy to give full input on the brakes as well as giving full rudder. It's kind of one or the other, for the most part, or not giving full input, but you know. Anyways, what I think is going on is when the flight path marker is up here at the top of the staple and you touch down with the wheels there, yeah, the landing feels smooth and it feels fine and everything, but the way I understand it is, unless I'm wrong and I'm mistaken about this, and maybe this is something you could verify with the SMEs or with WAGs or something, but in the flare, once you get over the runway overrun and you begin your flare, you're moving the flight path marker from being here to being to the center of the staple, which gives you the green circle, which gives you the landing touchdown AOA, which would be here, whereas the approach AOA is here. Because obviously, if the whole time on your approach you're already here at the top of that staple, and now you're pulling back on the stick for a flare, your AOA is going to drop down towards the center of that staple. It's not going to stay here at the top. You're not going to have that same AOA. And especially considering putting the engines to idle. I mean, the engines on this thing, the engine on this thing, it's not very powerful at idle power. So, anyways, that's my thought on it. That's my thinking. Whether right or wrong, I don't know, but that's my observation. And yeah, my landings weren't exactly perfect, particularly on the glide slope, but for the most part, I was keeping consistent with the AOA I was coming in at. I was managing the flare correctly, and as you saw, I never crashed the airplane, although I did come close once to hitting those rabbit lights at Interlake. But for the most part, I was generally pretty consistent with my approaches. Definitely was around the same approach speed. Definitely had the flight path marker roughly around the same location, everything. Only thing was glide slope, um, where the dashed line is, wasn't always where the end of the threshold was, but it was roughly around there. Because it depended on the situation. If I was too low, I can't come in at that glide slope because I'm gonna hit the ground before the runway. Too high, I need to come in a little lower than that glide slope, so on and so forth. So it's just my corrections. But my approaches were okay. I mean, I still need to work on them, obviously. With the airplane fully loaded like this and fully fueled, it's going to be a whole lot different story. Also with the Cat 3 um, loadout like this. But for the most part, my approaches were fairly consistent. Um, and you can see the landing behavior, how the airplane just wants to, when you get that green circle lit, it's not acting like when you have the top of the bracket, top of the staple. Because when you have the top of the staple, I can notice it's a lot smoother than when you have the green circle lit. But those are my views. I hope you take them into consideration. I hope you see what I'm talking about. If you don't, let me know and I'll try to explain more or better. But it took me a little bit of time to notice that and make that observation as well, because I think before this I even did a lot more touch and goes at Interlake. So the other day when I was playing around with the F-16, I've done a lot of touch and goes and I'm trying to see how the behavior is. All right, thank you. I hope that helps.